Why are people willing to pay nearly twice as much for a crooked origami crane they folded themselves as for a flawless one made by an expert? In 2011, a team of behavioral scientists uncovered a hidden power in our desire to build, naming it for an unlikely source: Swedish flat-pack furniture. If our brains are so easily fooled by a few hours of labor, what else might we be overvaluing without realizing it? The answer lies in the science that changed how we see the things we make and the value we give them. In 2011, a trio of behavioral scientists, Michael Norton from Harvard, Daniel Moschon, and Dan Ariely, introduced a new term to psychology: the IKEA Effect. Their research gave a name to a bias that had quietly shaped how people relate to the things they make. The IKEA Effect describes the tendency to place a higher value on objects we have had a hand in creating, even when our handiwork is far from perfect. The name itself nods to the Swedish furniture giant, famous for selling products that require assembly at home. Norton, Moschon, and Ariely noticed that the simple act of building a bookshelf or folding a paper crane changed how people felt about the finished product. In their published paper, they defined the effect as an increase in valuation for self-made items, driven by the labor invested rather than the skill displayed. What set their work apart was the clarity with which they captured this everyday phenomenon and turned it into a measurable concept. By giving this bias a name, they offered not just a label, but a new way to understand why effort can transform the ordinary into something we cherish. The IKEA Effect quickly entered the vocabulary of psychologists, designers, and marketers, shaping how companies and consumers think about value, ownership, and pride. To test their theory, the researchers designed a series of experiments that put the IKEA Effect under the microscope. In one study, participants were given sheets of paper and a set of instructions to fold origami frogs and cranes. Another group received flat-pack IKEA storage boxes to assemble. After completing their tasks, each person was asked how much they would pay for their own creation and how much for an identical item built by someone else. The researchers used real auctions with bids that carried the possibility of actual purchase to capture honest valuation. In total, about 100 to 200 people took part in these controlled experiments. The results were striking. Builders consistently valued their own handiwork far more than non-builders did, by an average of 63%. This gap held steady whether the item was a wobbly origami animal or a neatly assembled storage box. Even when the finished product looked amateurish, those who built it believed it was worth nearly as much as an expert's work. The data revealed a simple truth: effort alone was enough to inflate value, regardless of skill. Daniel Moschon, one of the study's authors, described it this way: people not only overvalued their creations, but assumed others would see them the same way. The numbers left little doubt. The IKEA Effect could be measured, repeated, and predicted in the lab. What remained was to understand why building something with your own hands changes the way you see it. Behind the numbers lies a powerful set of psychological forces. One is the drive for self-efficacy, the belief that you can shape your environment through your own actions. When someone builds a table or folds origami, the finished piece becomes more than just an object. It stands as proof of their own ability, a quiet signal of competence. This sense of accomplishment doesn't depend on the quality of the work. Even a lopsided bookshelf can inspire pride if it's the result of personal effort. Another force at play is effort justification, a principle rooted in cognitive dissonance. People are uncomfortable with the idea that their hard work might be wasted. To resolve this feeling, the mind inflates the value of whatever results from that labor. The phrase, "I worked hard, so it must be worth it," becomes a silent refrain. This isn't just a quirk of furniture assembly. Studies with animals, from rats to birds, show the same pattern. When effort is required, the outcome is prized more highly. Together, these mechanisms explain why building something yourself changes how you see it. The labor isn't just a means to an end. It becomes part of the story you tell about the object and about yourself. Every successful IKEA assembly rests on a delicate balance. If the task is too simple, like opening a box and pulling out a finished chair, there is no spark of pride, no sense of accomplishment. But if the instructions are confusing or the pieces refuse to fit, frustration takes over. The value that effort can add is not automatic. It depends on hitting the right threshold of challenge. Researchers found that the IKEA effect only comes to life when the project is hard enough to require real work, but not so hard that it feels impossible. This is the sweet spot. Enough difficulty to make completion meaningful, but not so much that it leads to failure. Completion is the linchpin. In the experiments, participants who built a box or folded origami all the way to the end felt a surge of ownership. But when the task was abandoned halfway, the effect vanished. In fact, people who left their projects unfinished valued them less than untouched items. The brain seems to punish wasted effort, turning failed attempts into reminders of defeat rather than sources of pride. For designers, this means every step must steer the builder toward a guaranteed finish. Only then does labor transform into love. In the early 1950s, the kitchens at General Mills buzzed with frustration. Betty Crocker's instant cake mix, once seen as a marvel of convenience, was failing to win over American home bakers. The mix was too simple. Just add water, stir, and bake. For many, that ease stripped away the feeling of accomplishment. Letters poured in from customers who missed the satisfaction of real baking. Dottie Marsh and her team of home economists listened closely. They decided to pull out the powdered eggs and rewrite the instructions, asking bakers to add a fresh egg themselves. It was a small change, but it made all the difference. Suddenly, the act of cracking an egg turned cake making into something personal again. Sales climbed, and Betty Crocker cake mixes found their place in pantries across the country. Bakers began to talk about their cakes with pride, as if they had made them from scratch. The lesson was clear long before psychologists gave it a name. When people invest even a little effort, the finished product feels more like their own. Across today's marketplace, the IKEA effect is no longer just a curiosity, it is a tool. Product designers now shape experiences that invite users to participate, knowing that a little labor can turn a simple object into something personal. Lego's adult sets, for example, are built with hundreds or even thousands of pieces, each step carefully mapped to ensure the builder feels challenged but never lost. Maker kits, from Arduino boards to DIY synthesizers, rely on clear instructions and a sense of progress to keep newcomers engaged. Meal kits like HelloFresh break dinner down into small, manageable tasks so that even novice cooks can plate a meal with pride. Custom sneaker platforms such as Nike Buy. You let customers pick colors, materials, and finishes, driving up both emotional investment and price. But as these techniques spread, designers face new ethical questions. One product designer says they want people to feel proud of what they have made, not trapped by it. To guide responsible design, experts now point to a 4-point checklist. Ensure every task is completable, match difficulty to the user's skill, make the labor meaningful, and always disclose how effort shapes value. In the end, the power of the IKEA effect depends on how thoughtfully it is applied. Every click, swipe, and kit we build today is designed to make us feel invested and less likely to walk away. The science is clear. When we build, we value. In a world of endless choices, the real question is who benefits most from the effort we gladly call our own?